Welcome to the Next Normal podcast. We engage in conversations with experts from various industries to help you future-proof yourself in a rapidly changing world. We do this by curating insights to help you prepare for what the next normal might look like.
We have as our guest Wadia Ait Hamza, the head of the Global Shapers community that Maria and myself are a part of at the World Economic Forum. Just for more context, the Global Shapers community was founded in 2011 by Professor Klaus Schwab to empower young people to play an active role in shaping local, regional, and global agendas. So with the expertise of Wadia, who's joining us today, we'll jump into our topic for this episode, which is on the future of civil society organizations and civil action. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So you lead the Global Shapers community, which has 11,000 members across 171 countries. With the recent events that are taking place, such as COVID-19, global anti-racism and democratic protests, and the severe economic downturn, how have you seen this group of young people mobilize to best support their communities? And what has been your greatest lessons learned from leading this group?
That's really a great question, because it also will help your audience know how the Shapers community is working. The Global Shapers community is a network of young people around the world. We are, as you said, more than 11,000 Shapers in more than 150 countries. And the Shapers are constituted in hubs. So every hub is independent and autonomous, and they decide what projects they want to tackle at the local level. You know, at the beginning of this crisis, we said in the team, maybe we should slow down to leave some space for the Shapers to breathe. I was really humbled and proud by the answer of the Global Shapers, because till now we delivered more than 130 projects tackling COVID-19 alone in the last months. And that's amazing, because the grassroots movement that is the Shapers community brought into life a lot of global initiatives. And we were overwhelmed by the reach of the Shaper, but also how they are coming to us at the HQ saying, how can we help? How can we support? And if I have to structure or frame the response of the Global Shapers community, and I'll do it in three objectives. One, the most important aspect was, how can we build knowledge first of community members? Shapers were looking for trustful, resources so that they know more about the virus and how they can tackle the response. Two, it was about how to amplify the trusted information. We know that one of the biggest challenges that we got with COVID-19 and it's going forward now is fake news. How can we amplify the trusted information and really to debunk the myths in communities around the world through direct outreach, through social media campaigns, or thought leadership in available channels? And that was very important. And I want to stress on that, because many of the information we have globally are in English or in the UN language. If we see countries like India, where you have thousands of languages, how can we democratize the access of that trusted information to our local communities? And that was one of the things that the Shapers took in translating, for example, the WHO, simple cartographic or simple articles or simple wash your hands into different local languages. And that the third aspect was, how can we increase collective action so that we can support the public health systems and protect the livelihoods and build more inclusive communities as a response to COVID-19. And here we saw it in so many places where the Shapers thought of new technologies like 3D printing to build face shields, or even like the Milan Hub, for example, who took an old container and revamped it into a medical room. So there are different ways in which the Shapers came together to build or to create something out of nothing as a response to COVID-19.
You touched on a few points such as trust and amplification of information. I feel as if also a summary of that is focusing on innovation. And it seems like right now there's a lot of youth within that age range where they're really engaged right now and they want to see change. From your perspective, have you seen any, either now or before, any gaps in terms of getting people involved civically? And from your perspective, how do you address those gaps?
I think there is a big gap at the global level, regional level, and local level. And that gap comes from what I think, at least, is that the youth are being for a big chunk of history, see them as the source of the problem. And the gap is that we need to change that narrative, that youth can be part of the solution, as they are bringing, one, innovative methods, approaches. Two, they are bringing a sense of urgency that maybe the older generation don't have. And three, they are bringing a knowledge of the new technologies that the old generation don't have. So for us to change that narrative is very important. We're not saying that the youth are the only solution, but they are part of the solution. And changing that narrative is for, at least for me, is the biggest gap. When we go to institutions, when we go to governments, to private sector, when we say, for example, do you have in your board a young person? Well, what they would say, like, what the young person will bring to my board, which is X and Y, and they have this experience. But if we don't tell those, for example, the private sector, that if you don't take the youth as an ally right now, you're not seeing them as your future consumers, future competitors, or they are the ones who will make an end to your business, because they are coming with innovation. And we see that change management in institutions is very hard. Young people are not here to take your seat, but they want to be around the same table where the decision is made. It also brings us to the discussion of education. Do you want an experience or do you want a diploma? It's chicken egg question, but I think the young people are bringing a knowledge that is not out there. I remember when I was in school, we were studying that companies and governments, they have 5-year plans. But now who can afford to have a 5-year plan? You don't know even what's next week can happen. And it's impossible for you to say, here is my plan for the next 3 years. You have to be flexible and change it, because you need to deal with ambiguity, you need to deal with uncertainty, you need to deal with complexity, and you need to deal with the changing world. And that's a term that is new, VUCA, but it's becoming our bread and butter now. You have to deal with that. And if we see the main successful companies are all created by young people, and they disrupted the whole business, which no one said it will be disrupted, like the hospitality. Airbnb don't own any beds, and they sell more than hotels. Same thing with Uber, same thing with all, and those are innovative ways that you don't study, again, to the point of education. No one told them about debunking the myth of hospitality or transportation, but it comes from that freshness, from that innovative spirit that the young people are bringing to the table.
It sounds like we live in a VUCA world. I think that's been shown, that we've seen that more and more over the past couple of months, where disruption is the norm. And I liked the point that you raised around the young people bringing urgency. I think we see that particular around climate change and action. I wanted to, you had touched on shapers really using innovation like 3D printing to create masks. Wanted to touch a little bit more about how you see the use of technology helping with civic action more generally. Are there any types of technologies that you can speak to that you see making a large and lasting impact right now?
I think the use of technology in all sectors, not only the civil society, is becoming a fact. And actually, with COVID-19, there was an article talking about the use of technology in the month of May or April was at the same level as experts expected to be in 2030. Mm-hmm. So we kind of gained 10 years in terms of the use of technology. It doesn't mean that technology is not there. Technology is out there. But how people were refraining from it, and people were like, oh, I need to travel to make this meeting, and it's impossible to do it via video conferencing. And now everyone's saying like, yeah, I can do all my meetings via video conferencing. It's not a new technology. It's just the mindset that we need to get to think of using technology as a tool rather than an end goal. You know, if you told even the health sector that we can use 3D printing to help you for your face shield to protect you from a virus, They will say there is no way to do that. But we saw that most of those actions came from civil society, like the shapers. They are the ones who created those masks. It's not like they are doing it for a business. And there are many examples like that where either civil society or social entrepreneurs are bringing great ideas to solve a social problem or a problem that is really at the grassroots. And one of them, for example, is delivering blood in Rwanda via drones. Because, you know, if you want to send it by road, it will take 15 hours or 10 hours. By drone, it takes 15 minutes. You receive a text message and you are able to send the blood by drone to a hospital in the middle of the jungle. So there are different ways of thinking of how can we use the technology. Till now, unfortunately, in many countries, technology is seen from the realm of security. Like, oh, drones, they may take pictures of sensitive areas, we should ban them. But they're not seeing them from the realm of, this is a tool that can help me advance something. How can we advance the agriculture by having drones with sensors that can see where there is a lack of water or not? And all this, I think it's the role also of civil society to be the bridge between technology providers and also the population. And that's an important role because till now there is a big gap between someone who invents a technology and a government who should put the laws and the policies to that technology. And in the middle, there is nothing. So I think we need to debug those myths about technology, but also have the people change their mindset, and civil society are the ones who can support.
I know WEF speaks a lot about the fourth industrial revolution, and I know McKinsey had estimated that about a third of humanity will be in a different job by the end of the decade. And as you mentioned, there's some communities or some population that will be more at risk because they're poorer, because of where they're geographically located, who won't have the right skills for the future. And I think COVID-19, as you mentioned, has kind of made these vulnerabilities more apparent. Do you think it's civil society, a part of civil society's mandate? And in what ways, if it is, for leaders to push to help people to be more prepared to upskill and reskill for the future?
Definitely, and for me, leadership in any sector, but mainly in the civil society, is leadership where you see a problem and you fix it, and you don't ask, is it my role or not? So how can we also change our mindset that everyone, whatever sector, needs to chime in, because no one can do it alone. And in terms of the changing the skills, to the report of McKinsey you mentioned, the forum released a report saying that the kids going to the primary school in this academic year, 2019-2020, 60% of them will do jobs that don't exist. And that's huge. Of course, there is the role of the government who's in charge of the education sector, but it's the role of everyone. Because if we go to that time without us being ready for it, it's the whole society that will collapse. It's not the government, but it's the society. And the forum also released in the same report the set of skills needed for 2015 and the set of skills needed for 2020. And the top three, only one stayed there. It's complex problem solving. The two other skills moved out of top three, which in 2015 was one, complex problem solving, two, coordinating with others, three, people's management. In 2020, it's complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. Two new skills in the top three. So the world is changing. Definitely, the world is changing.
Well, let's hone in a little bit more on complex problem solving. How do we teach, or how do we ensure that our children, particularly those that are from communities that are more deprived, have that skill so that when 2030 or 2050 or whenever they get into the world of work, that they're not left behind?
I think there are different ways. The first one, you know, in many countries, or the majority of the countries, kids are being educated by they have to learn by heart their physics course. They have to learn by heart the chemistry course or whatever course. And that's not the right approach. The approach is, how can we make kids or students learn how to learn by themselves? That's the main skill they can need. Because let's say today you graduate from X university and you have Y diploma. Your job today will be different in 20 years. So does it mean that you have to go back to school? No, you should adapt yourself. But if you don't have that capacity to learn by yourself, you're lost. Plus, the other thing that we should make as an important change is, how can we think of system leadership? The world is moving the world is already systems. Everything is a system. But till now, we only look from one perspective, and we don't see it as a system. So when you have someone going to medical school, for example, to be a doctor, he's focusing on that so narrowly. But in 10 years, guess who's going to be doing surgeries? Robots. Can the doctor fix the robot? Probably not. That maybe he needs that skill? Probably yes, because if there is something wrong during the surgery, you want him to fix that robot, or at least to have first knowledge. So how can we think of not one point, but different points? Another example, which I find very interesting. Now we already know that there are many cars that are on autopilot. If we know the car is on autopilot and can take decisions, let's say the car is going and knows 100% that there will be a death accident, either the passenger or the person crossing the street in front of it. Taking that decision is a code. Who's coding that? Is an engineer. But based on which values? Western values, Christian values, Jewish values, Muslim values? That this engineer studied religion or values or ethics? Probably not. So how can we make sure we collect the dots before connecting them? And that is one of the things that is lacking from the educational system today, because we only focus on one area without its branches that are going everywhere. And you can pick any job and you can see ramifications with other sectors. Languages, anthropology, history, philosophy, religion, and so on and so forth. And that's what complex problem solving in the first layer means. And then being able to have that knowledge behind you is a first step to be able to solve complex problem solving, because you can connect the dots between different fields.
I feel as if we're constantly told to be put into a box, and we have to fit certain criterias, and that leads to people being in specific roles for a specific time frame without having the foresight of, for example, you even said drones, making face masks with like 3D printers, video conferencing. It's kind of eliminating a sense borders to a certain degree, because we can all just hop onto the internet and see each other. With that in mind, do you see our current economic framework changing because of everything that's happening right now, in terms of countries, companies, or communities? Now they can begin to prioritize the emotional, social, and physical needs of people in a completely new way.
I think it's changing, and if it's not changing, we have to change it. We cannot go into the same world. There is no way people, institutions, everyone will accept that, because it put us in front of the reality of all the failures that we had in our system. When you mentioned like we're having people put in boxes, remember that school was created to have a raw product, go into a factory to have a product. When you go to school, you go because you want to be an architect. It's a product for the society. You have to be something. And the school is like if you were raw product at the beginning, they put you into a formatting, and then you end up as the society wants. That cannot continue as it was. Many of those jobs will be done by technology. So what we need is people who can think. And many of the schools, unfortunately, and many of the systems in the world do not, for example, teach critical thinking or analytical skills. How many people have critical thinking and analytical skills to be able to say we want to change the system, and how can we change it? We have to go that field because we need everyone's support. The world is changed or has to be changed, and I think history will look at us, and either we're gonna make history or we will not be part of history. The good news is human beings will pass through this pandemic, will pass through this crisis. We went through worse, but are they gonna remember us as the one who created a future that is sustainable, that protect nature, that doesn't leave anyone behind, that think of everyone, that think of the economy as not the business to make business? That cannot go anymore. And that's why also, like, the World Economic Forum announced for Davos 2021, the theme will be the Great Reset, because we need a great reset.
That's very sobering, very insightful, but it gives us a call to action that we cannot continue as it is. And I love the thought that you left with us, that we have to collect the dots before we can connect them.
Out of everything that's been discussed today, from automation to shifting the ideas of tools and how we're cooperating in society, what are you personally most excited about that's coming out of civic action and civil societies today?
I think I'm more excited about the opportunity that this pandemic brought. You know, I truly believe that everything happens for a good reason, not on a personal level, but at the collective level. And this pandemic and all what brought from the biggest social movements of our generation is everything will happen for a good reason. And I think it's time for us to think of a new system. It's to think of how can we not leave anyone behind. And that's an opportunity for us as young people, for the civil society, for governments, for the business sector, to refocus on the main important aspect is human beings as part of nature. And if we focus on that, the rest is just superficial things. Money, material stuff is a tool, is not an end goal. We have to change our mindset. You know, you mentioned at some point the countries and the borders, all those are human-made inventions. Unfortunately, in the last decades, we've been focusing as human beings on our differences rather than our similarities. I truly believe that there is a leader in every one of us.
Thank you so much, Wadia, for taking the time out and sharing the insights and being a part of the Next Normal family.
Thanks for having me, and wishing your audience to keep healthy and safe and starting from themselves. I think change starts by ourselves.
Thank you, Wadia.
Thank you.